Hey, Yvonne here, succession planning expert, executive coach, and the creator of Succession app. Today we're going to talk about the challenges of unexpected board turnover. Have you ever been on a board of directors where suddenly a number of the directors want to leave at the same time? Or have you been a CEO or an executive director and on your board, suddenly people are coming to you and resigning from the board or retiring from the board? And not just one or two, but maybe more than that, 3 or 4. It's tough. It's really hard, and I've been there myself as the chair of a board of directors. So let me tell you a couple of stories about how this really does happen. So I was working with an organization. I think they had about 9 board members. And what they wanted was they wanted me to come in and give them the results of a board assessment that they had taken. And the board assessment was, how are they doing overall in terms of working as a board? Working together, do they respect each other? How are the board meetings? All of that sort of thing. When I walked in the room that day, just to kind of set up, as the board members were coming in and the CEO was there, they were all chatting really loud. It was really loud. And I really like that when I'm working with boards, because then I know that there's some trust and respect with each other. They like each other's company, that sort of thing. So we're starting the process, and I'm telling them, we're writing some things on a list of things that they need to do a little bit better. And we got to succession planning, board succession planning. With the CEO, I think they were pretty well set because we did have CEO succession, but this was a board succession question. And they kind of looked at me, the rating was so low, and I said, okay, this was your lowest score on this assessment. And so I said, why? Why is this so low? And they said, first of all, we aren't doing any board succession planning. And one of them raised their hand and said, well, our CEO's about 55, so he's probably gonna work he said he's gonna work about 7 more years. I'm probably gonna stay on the board until he retires. And then the next hand goes up, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna leave when our CEO retires. And then another hand, and I'm not kidding you. That really happened. And so I said that can't happen. You have to have more of a plan. You can't have your CEO leaving and your board switch over all at the same time. And so what happened is I gave them an assignment, and they actually did a really good job. They created a committee, and a couple of the committee members actually decided to leave earlier than the rest of them. And so they really did a good job, a better job of succession planning. The other example I have is a credit union where they had no idea that they were going to have turnover. And I went in to work with them on board succession planning, and part of the process has them anticipating when they might be leaving. And when we got the results back, we found out that 6 people wanted to leave out of 9, wanted to leave in a 4-year period. So you never know. If you don't have a plan, and if you don't ask your board members when they might be leaving, you could be running in the same type of situation. So what can happen if you have a lot of board turnover? First of all, it can change the whole board dynamic. And this affects the board, but it really affects your CEO or your executive director. You might have people that don't trust each other. There may be people that cliques may start forming on the board. There may be some issues that come up with the new board members and the CEO. You never know. So that's something that could happen. Another thing that could happen is you could have difficulty finding new board members, especially if you're a nonprofit or a not-for-profit cooperative, when you don't pay your board members. And I can remember being on the nominating committee at our credit union, and people would apply to be on the board, and then as soon as one of the questions was, well, how much does it pay? And as soon as we said nothing, then they would withdraw their application. So it is difficult, it's more difficult to find board members for board positions that don't pay. So you don't want to run into that difficulty. The other thing that happens is you might not have the right skills on the board. There are some critical skills that each organization wants represented on their board of directors. And if you have mass exit of board members, you may be missing a lot of those skills. Also, you may run into problems with a lack of board leadership. So I had a client who had 7 board members. 5 out of the 7 left the board at the same time. And what happened was they were able to recruit, but one of the brand new board members had to be the chair of the board because the other 2 didn't want it. And he just said, okay, I'll do it. So it takes a while for people to understand their role as a board member, and a while for them to understand the organization that they're on the board of. So it's very important to also think about your board leadership. So what can you do? First of all, you can create a process that anticipates when people might be leaving the board. And a lot of board members just hate to write down that date because they think it's written in stone, and there's no flexibility then, and they can't change their mind. I usually allow some flexibility with that. We do want some pretty good estimate, but I do allow some flexibility. The next step would be to create a list of critical competencies that you'd like represented on the board. Now, what you're not trying to do is you're not trying to evaluate whether everybody has these competencies and trying to kick people off the board. What you're trying to do is say, these are the things we would like to see represented on our board. And so this will help you with recruiting people for the future. So you want to look to see what gaps you have currently or what gaps you're going to have in the future. You also want to develop a process to recruit new board members on a regular basis, and not when somebody gives notice. Say, okay, does anybody have an idea of who could be on the board? Really what we're trying to do with board succession planning is we're trying to plan ahead. Because sometimes it's the people that you really want on your board have other commitments, and they say, oh, I'd love to be on your board, but I have this commitment until this time frame, and you can keep them on a list. So it's important to always be looking for board members, keeping them on a list. You could even create an associate board member so that that person could get to know the board and how the board works. The other thing is to create a leadership succession plan as well. So it's important to have a board succession plan, but it's also important to have a leadership succession plan at your organization. So who's going to lead the board? And then what are those guidelines that say, how long does somebody, is somebody the chair or is somebody the vice chair? How long do they have to be on the board before they are in a leadership position? So just to summarize, it's important to create a process to anticipate when board openings will occur, to select critical competencies and assess your board to make sure that you are covering the gaps and you know what the gaps are going to be in the future. You develop a recruitment plan and it's a consistent, ongoing recruitment plan. And you create a leadership succession plan. I included a resource below for you to take a look at your board succession readiness score of your board. So click on the link below to get that information. Also, hit the subscribe button below so you can continue to receive all you need to know about succession planning.